Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Truly Myrtle podcast. It is so lovely to have you back with me. I am thrilled to be kicking off the summer of yarn with some fabulous farmers from right here in New Zealand. We are going to spend January looking at all sorts of aspects of yarn in our summer of yarn. And there's no better place to start than with the people who make the yarn, grow the sheep and make the yarn. So welcome, Eleanor and Jack. They are calling in from Christchurch here, or just out of Christchurch here in New Zealand. And they have their very beautiful, I'm going to show you some of their yarn, Starcrest yarn, which is a soft, super sheepy, smelly Polwarth yarn. So welcome. It is so lovely to have you with me. I just thought it would be nice to hear about what it's like to be a farmer in New Zealand, growing wool, growing sheep to make wool. And I thought, first of all, you could start by just telling us how did this all start for you? How did Starcrest Farm come about?
Hi there, Libby, and thanks for doing this. That's really cool. So Polwarth sheep are a three-quarter Merino, one-quarter Lincoln breed of sheep, originated in Australia. Mm-hmm. And I've got a picture here of them, and just to show you what they sort of look like.
Oh yeah, show us what they look like. It's a beautiful painting.
So that was a painting done by our sheep, and those, that's a ewe and a lamb, and they're in full wool. So
beautiful. So tell us, when you say they're part Lincoln and part Merino, what are the benefits of that? Why did they bring those two breeds together to make Polwarth?
Eleanor might be able to answer that.
They've got the fineness of Merino,
yeah,
but the sheen and the strength of the Lincoln.
Right. Okay.
So it was developed in Australia originally, but it's a breed in its own right now, and we don't have a huge amount of them in New Zealand, actually.
Oh, okay.
And they were bred for something a little bit more durable than Merino. So,
right.
So the Merino is so fine. So you're getting around the 12, 14 micron, even down as low as 7 in some places. But typical Polwarth is between 19 and 23.
So it's still really fine, isn't it? Still beautifully
fine. So our line of sheep, we've actually bred them a little bit finer. So they're around the sort of between 17 and 20 are most of our sheep. The problem with that in terms of production goes that in that fineness, they've got a tendency to have more Merino characteristics in the wool than the Lincoln. So we went down that track for a couple of years and didn't have too many in that sort of field, and then we reverted back to the others. But however, once you get below 17, it's more Merino than it is Polwarth.
Right. So the sheep themselves come with all of the problems that might have been a barrier to having Merinos.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So too fine and not enough length as well. So we have typical 4-inch staple for the 12-month wool, and the weight of fleece as well. So there's they were bred on a Saxon Merino, which is a smaller boned one than the Rambouillet Merino, and that in turn has a smaller carcass, but the Lincoln lifts it up a little bit more. So our sheep are typically around the sort of 55 to 65 kilo sort of mark. Mm-hmm. A typical Merino is around 45 to 50 kilos. So
they're a little bit heavier.
Yeah, so a little bit heavier, yeah. And our wool production is around 6.5 kilos annual clip off the animals that we have on the farm to shear. So in production-wise, that's not too bad, actually. So
that's good. So what would you expect out of, how does that compare to other sheep? Is it's kind of average or a little bit more?
National average would be around 3.5 to 4 kilos. So
that's a lot more.
Yeah. So it's a lot more, yeah. So, I mean, you can get Merinos that clip 10 kilos of wool, and we've had fleeces around that 10 and even up to 11, 12 kilos. But wethers that around the sort of 85 odd kilo mark, and they've clipped around that 11 kilos, 10, 11 kilos. The biggest thing is keeping the consistency of the wool. So what we've got is a small flock. We've got 50 to 60 ewes typically, and so it's quite hard to, on a small block, to actually produce consistent sheep. But if you feed them well and get a longer period of gestation out of them, then their life. So we've got sheep around 14 years old, 15 years old.
Yeah.
The typical lifespan is around 7 or 8 at the most.
Wow. So
commercially, 7 years, yeah.
They just run them hard, I suppose, and there's just so many of them. You can't have this sort of individual care to them when there's tons, I guess.
So I've learned a lot with this small size, and I've never enjoyed farming more than what I do right now.
Yeah.
It's been a big learning curve in terms of that consistent production and what we want and what we're producing and how we do it. For 12 months of the year, I have to monitor the sheep. I can't let them go too fat. I can't leave them thin. If they produce a lot of fat, when things start to get dry, like Canterbury's typically a bit of a dry sort of a region, then when they lose the fat, they actually lose their wool growth, which creates a break in the wool. And when we have a break in the wool, it's no good for processing in terms of a worsted yarn. So, and as I said, consistency is the biggest thing. And on a small scale, it's pretty hard to do. You've got to monitor them quite a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so just breaking that down for people a little bit. So if they have a little bit of disruption in their weight and the growing of them, then the break in the yarn means the break in the fleece means if you want to lie them all flat and create that lovely long yarn that you twist rather than higgledy-piggledy with a woolen spun, it just becomes impossible when you've got these little breaks. So it's quite a delicate thing then just to look after them so that you're creating that lovely long 4-inch staple that you talked about throughout the whole flock to make it work. Yeah, that's really interesting. Take me back to the beginning, because you've said you've got 60 odd sheep. How did you start? I mean, have you always farmed? When did you decide that you were going to throw yourself into Polwarth? And also for people that are overseas, is this where you get Polwarth, this end of the world, or can they get Polwarth at other parts of the world as well?
Not much in other parts of the world, mainly Australia and New Zealand. And we moved to a small block in 2002, and a few years after that, I heard of somebody I knew that was selling her flock of coloured Polwarth. And I said to Jack, she's selling these Polwarth, perhaps we could have some. Well, he wasn't having a bar of it at the time, and I'm not quite sure why he changed his mind, actually. So we started with these 12 sheep, and Jack, I have to say, Jack's been a farmer since he was 14, so he had all the right experience that way. So we had these 12 sheep. We used to have to shear them outside on a board. We had no shearing shed. We had a dagging plant, not even a proper shearing thing.
Tell people who don't know what a dagging plant is or any those terms. Can you describe that?
It's just a rudimentary...
small wee motor on a flexible shaft instead of a down tube and a shearing shed. So we're shearing them outside on this thing. And
so eventually we decided we might see if our friends at the Spinners and Weavers Guild might like our fleeces, and they did. We kept producing some reasonable fleeces for a few years, and then we moved to Oxford, and we heard a talk by Jackie and Graham McLaughlin from Wild Earth Yarns, and we spoke to them about what you would need to go to a further level, because in the meantime the 12 sheep, of course, had grown to about 100 and
it happens so fast,
I'm not
doesn't
sure
it?
how that happens.
12 and then 100.
So typically our lambing percentage is around 150%.
Wow, that's really good, isn't it?
And so that's the condition of the ewes at tupping time, and also the level of feeding and all that sort of carry on. I do have a policy of if I wouldn't like it, probably my sheep won't like it either. So I treat them the same. So
nice.
I don't try and argue with them or anything else. I try and sort of make their life as happy as I possibly can. And that's the reward for me, is that what we're getting out of them is good quality. And so when we were down at Cust, we had calves, and so we didn't have much area for sheep left over. Here we bought a few cattle up here, but decided that cattle weren't our thing and just concentrated solely onto the sheep. So, and going with Eleanor, so Jackie and Graham said, you need 100 kilos of a line before it can be scoured. So with a limited amount, we have to produce top quality fleeces, and we've got 3 lines, so we need 300 kilos of good quality fleece that's skirted and all just bare fleece weight. So the belly's off, the fribs off, the neck, all that sort of carry on is taken, the back's taken out. So we need, and typically we only have about 30 white sheep, and including our hoggets and ewes. And we typically get around 160 kilos. So
wow, that's pretty good. I've got some of your white. I'll show everybody your 3. I've got your colours here. These are, you've got the white one where you have the fewest amount of sheep. Then is that right? And then there's this lovely grey. It's like a brownie grey. It's my favourite kind of grey, actually. That sort of browny grey colour. How many of your sheep would be this sort of grey colour, or do you make this by? Because there's a darker one.
The darker
so you've got
one
the
white.
dark. Okay, so we've got 2 different coloured sheep. The darker one, which is that lovely. It's a brown. It's sort of a browny grey. It's quite a browny grey, isn't it? That one's beautiful. Yes. And then I see. So you have those 2, and then that one is a blend of these 2 together. Yeah, absolutely stunning.
Next time we do that, it might not be quite the same.
Right. So you have to make
So
the sheep
changes
each year.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And
the white never changes.
No, white always stays the same. But the blend will change depending on the intensity of this and the quantity, I suppose, of the 2. Okay. And then you have also got all these beautiful colours, which Eleanor dyes, which we can talk about that as well in a second. But okay, so you spoke to them, you realised you needed hundreds and hundreds of kilos, and you had a whole bunch of sheep, but you didn't just need hundreds of kilos, you needed hundreds of kilos of really good quality fleece. And so once you've skirted them and you got all of the bits and bobs off, you had ample. You've realised you actually had a lot of fabulous fleece. And so does it all go to get spun? Do you keep anything back? I mean, what happens with the yarn making process?
After it's been taken to Timaru to be scoured, we get it back, and then we have it spun as needed, but we also make spinning fibre as well, combed top for spinners. So it's just a decision as to how many kilos of yarn we want and how many kilos of fibre. But Wild Earth have minimum quantities that they would do as well.
That's the spinning. That's the place that makes bonus, the yarn.
Yeah. The bonus is that the first yarns that we had made were all worsted spun.
Right. And
we didn't realise that we don't want to have a bad year and have wool with breaks or wool that's too short. But the bonus is it can be made into lovely woolen spun, which is what you've got there.
Yeah, wool and spun. Yeah,
So
absolutely beautiful.
That
Mm.
so the thing that sometimes I try and just do one shearing in the winter. Sometimes our two-tooths don't have the minimum of 3 inches of wool because they're rearing a lamb and because they're
Right.
shorn late. So going back another wee step, I tip shear the hoggets so that we can actually put our hogget wool into the main line. If it still had the lamb tips on it, it couldn't be processed into the worsted blend. So, and of course, the yarn starts off with the sliver, which Ellen was talking about, and then it goes into the worsted yarn. So,
Right.
so that 1 year 2 years ago, we had our hoggets, for example, were here on lush grass, and I put them out grazing onto some harder grass. Plenty of it, no problems about filling their stomach and all that sort of carry on, but it was a change in diet. And so only about 10 hoggets had good fleeces, all the rest had a break in them.
Wow, so it really is quite a subtle thing that can happen. That
it is very much,
yeah.
yeah.
Interesting.
So,
One thing that's important to mention at some stage is that in New Zealand, we only have 2 wool scours. So one's in the North Island, one's in the South, and we only have 3 spinning mills. And fortunately for us, there is a spinning mill in
Christchurch.
Yeah, and they do a woolen spun and a semi.
Yes.
Semi-woolen spun. Yeah. So do you get to choose then every time? Okay, do you have much made in worsted now, or do you decide some worsted and some woolen, or is it pretty much all woolen spun these days?
We've got plenty of worsted right now.
Excellent.
Yes.
Oh, that's good. So it's nice and varied. Oh, how fantastic. Yeah. So you're a spinner. And how much of that spinning knowledge and that experience of spinning has helped in this whole process of knowing, okay, this is exactly what we want for fibre and this is exactly what I want for yarn? Do you think it's made it has? Yeah. And what particularly? Yeah.
So when I was shearing the sheep, I'd be looking at it from a farmer perspective, and I'd be thinking, oh, this is a great fleece, and I'd throw it on the table and I'd say, what do you think of that one? And she'd say, oh, that one's crap. I'd think, what? But from a commercial point of view, it was a good fleece. But from a spinning point of view, it wasn't up to the standard.
Right.
And so it took me a while to learn the difference between a spinning fleece and a commercial fleece.
And
so
what is
they
the
are
difference? What are the main differences?
The style and the quality of the wool. So like we now breed sheep that haven't got a hairy britch, for example. So down in the back leg, the wool tends to get a bit hairy in a lot of sheep. So we've selected that out of them, and so now quite a lot of our fleece can go into the spinning fleeces because they are consistent all the way through the fleece. So you look at an animal and you look at the shoulder, the belly, or the flank, and down the hind quarter, and make sure that it's all consistent. So there's been quite a lot of selection going on to make that, so that we started off with a really good base ewe. She was born in 2000, that we bought off Shona, and she had twins every year, and most of them were ewe lambs. And so that was the basis of our flock. She lived to 18, so she was quite a nice producing sheep. And as I said, her trait can be seen in about probably better than 60% of our flock now, present flock. The breeding characteristics of what she had: white flame down the nose, white socks, and a white tail. When you tail them, the white tail comes off. So,
wow! So it's a really strong genetic line.
Gene that comes through. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Amazing. We mentioned a little bit before about Eleanor dyeing, and I have some little samples here of some of the beautiful colours that you've created on your yarn. So tell us a little bit about that. Was this new for you? Had you dabbled in dyeing before? Because you do it all yourself, don't you? All the dyeing.
I've done a little bit with the guild and things like that, and it started. I thought, oh well, let's have a try, because, as you know, woolen spun yarn is wonderful for colour work, because all the little stitches, they want to hold hands with each other, basically. So, and I kind of, I'm not quite sure why I decided to do just little mini skeins, but that's how it's happened. And theoretically, we're retired because we're both in our 70s.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into dyeing great garment lots of wool. So I do these little mini skeins, and I do like several colour ranges, and I just take them along to events that we're at.
Yeah.
And my daughter has a wool shop in Rangiora, and she does stock some of the colours in there.
Yeah. Fantastic. So give us a feel of what's happening in New Zealand in the yarn world, because I feel like we're going through a little bit of a shift at the moment. There's a lot more people seem to be wanting to knit, but the yarn availability and the mills, everything seems to be a little bit changeable at the moment. So from your perspective, what's it like being a farmer in the New Zealand's yarn market?
I think people are starting to look for things that are made in New Zealand, that they can look at the traceability and that kind of thing. We are super small, really, a very small producer, but it's very, very satisfying to be doing this from our own sheep. It's not earning us millions of dollars, however.
Yeah, we won't have a Ferrari sitting in our garage in the next year. That's
but maybe
sure.
a tractor, maybe.
Even doubt that.
They're pricey.
At the moment, but anyway.
Yeah. So you're seeing more people choosing New Zealand, and I think from what I see as well, really good quality. They know where it's coming from. There's a story around it. I think that's very appealing to people, to look for people around them. But I actually think that internationally, even though we say we want local, internationally, I think there's a real desire for something like what you've got with the Polwarth. If once people start to realize, oh, this is actually really lovely, then maybe it will be a bigger market, but still retaining that boutique feature that you have. So they're seeking out something that's really unique and special, kind of no matter where it is. I wonder if you're seeing any of that.
So one of the things that we've got is, because we're small, we're able to react a lot quicker, okay? But the other part is that when we started, we just got started and COVID came along and shut everyone down. So that was, we had the first lot of processing done. So we're carrying stock 3 years old. So if we'd have sold it, we would have had income 3 years ago. But we're only selling it now. So in between times, our cost for production, when we get it scoured, for example, we only get 60% back from the scour. When we get it processed, actually some lines, we had some white wool done. Jackie came out here one day and said, and they brought it out to us. And said we had 84 kilos processed of white wool. And she said, oh, what do you think this yielded, Jack? And she had a big grin on her face. And I sort of thought, 95 is pretty high, I'll try that. I said, 95. And she said, 98. We've never had anyone do as good as that ever.
And so what that means is that the yarn the fibre that you're giving them is of such good quality that you're getting it pretty much all turns into yarn. They don't have to have much wastage. Right.
Exactly.
Wow.
So there's a number of things there. So the quality of the wool is the main sort of driver of that. But also Eleanor's diligence on the table, actually making it so all the short bits are taken out, all the bits and pieces. So that's only 2% of the wool dropped out of that total clip, that 84 kilos. So that's pretty unique, and it's a pretty good feather in our cap.
Yeah.
The other thing that we do, because of our consistency, when they set up a machine, it is set and it just runs through and they don't have to do any adjustment. When it's inconsistent, they can get some shorter bits and then some longer bits and then some shorter bits, and of course that upsets the sort of length of the machine. One of the major things that we have people saying to us is, we love your wool. It's so easy to knit with. It's so easy to go through the fingers and it just slides away. And that's because of the consistency that Jack and Graham are able to do with the spinning process, because they've got consistent stuff to work with. And it's like you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. So if you've got good quality to start off with, you can make good quality yarn. We believe we've got a top-line product. My ethos is that I'm always trying to be above average in whatever I do. My sport is wood chopping, and I'm still on the veterans team. So but the part about that is that if you produce good quality stuff, it is a market. There is a market there that you can actually access. One of the biggest things is the drop in wool price in New Zealand. The farmers in New Zealand have reverted to just lamb production rather than wool production. I've heard of a station down here, 3,000 acre station. It costs them $90,000 to shear the sheep for the year, and they get a return of $40,000. So it costs them $50,000 just to shear the sheep to maintain the sheep that they've got. So logically, how long can you sustain that? They do that because they are able to get a better lambing percentage than if they went to other sheep and other breeder sheep like Wiltshires that are self-shedding. But I believe natural products are going to be a winner and eventually.
I think so.
Our oil products, all our nylons and synthetics and all that sort of thing, they're going to have their day. We have got a product that we're in the process of actually handing it on to some other people, Ruben. But if that goes through, they may well take it up to another level. But at this stage, we're still doing what we're doing, and so it's the future of it. A great future. I can't see any other thing for it. So, but as I said, you've got to be above average.
I think one of the things is that we've tried not to diversify too much. So when we shear, all the brown fleeces go in one bin, all the greyish looking ones go in another, and then the whites. And I don't think I'd try and change any of that. I started doing dyeing, but I'm not going to get into that. And no, it's good fun and it sells well at events, but so just keeping it small.
Oh, I think it's exciting, and I agree with you. I think that although it's like we're in a funny time because we've got this major, particularly when it comes to products to make clothes and accessories and things that we can get from overseas that are made on a mass scale, as well as the clothes themselves. It causes hiccups in the local market for sure, but I do feel like that we are going to see more and more of a resurgence into natural fibers because the quality is just so good, the longevity is so good, and I don't know, I just think it feels nice. It all just feels better. And so I'm hoping, I think that we will see a return. So tell everybody, these are their three beautiful colours. I'll just show you again. So you are a small scale producer. You don't have big fancy schmancy shops and all those sorts of things, but where can people get hold of your yarn if they want to so that they can enjoy it for themselves?
They can get it from us. I have a Facebook page so they can message me on that. It's just Starcrest Farm.
Starcrest Farm. I'll put a link to it. Yep.
They can get it from my daughter's shop, which is called The Wool Shop, and Brilliant. It's in Rangiora.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure, I'll make sure we've got links to those. Yeah.
I was just going to say, you've been showing off your woolen spun.
Oh, yes.
I'm going to just move over here.
Starcrest farm came about by Star was a dog that we had here, and she was just a really good old dog, and she lived to about 15 actually, but 16. And then Crest came from we're at the top end of Oxford, and so we're on the crest of a hill. So Starcrest, that's how it came about. So,
nice. Yeah. That's nice. That's nice.
So I don't know whether people will be able to tell the difference, but that is the worsted spun.
There we are. Hold them up. Well, they might be able to because it looks quite sleek to go a little bit further your way. But one noticeable thing about the ones you're holding is the dark of the chocolate of that darker one you've got is so chocolate. Isn't that beautiful? So that's just an example, is it, of a different year producing a different colour?
It may have been.
Yeah.
Well, this is.
It could have been that I chose these ones.
This brown's more recent, but yes.
Yeah.
Because it does change from year to year. I can't guarantee that the next brown that we do will be exactly the same as that.
Oh, it's just absolutely beautiful. And smelling. It just smells of sheep. Absolutely beautiful. Oh, thank you so much, you two. That was so interesting. And it's really, really good to talk to you. I'm looking forward to seeing you both when I head back down your way in March.
Yeah,
it'll be really nice to see you again. Yeah,
yes.
It'll be really good. Yeah. But thank you so much for joining us and kicking off our summer of yarn so that everybody can go and just start feeling good about yarn and learning a little bit more about it. And I hope that they take the opportunity and grab some from you because it is truly beautiful yarn. So thank you both.
Lovely.
Yes. Thank you so much, Lovey.
Good to talk to you.
Pleasure.
Okay.
Yeah, you too.
Okay. Bye.